Hello everyone and welcome back to Closet Gaming. Today we are going to take a look at Book of Demons. This roguelike hack and slash dungeon crawler promises hours of fun gameplay coming from a unique twist in cute graphics while bringing you that nostalgic Diablo-like feeling. Whether it can deliver on these promises is the question we will try to answer today. Book of Demons is available on Steam for €20.99, your regional equivalent. Honestly, when I first saw Book of Demons, it didn't really excite me that much. It just looked like another dungeon crawler with decent looking graphics, but it's not like you can't find plenty of those on the Steam store. But when I looked a bit further into it, I realized that I need to put this on my try out list. And it's all because of that unique twist. So, what exactly is that twist? Well, it's the fact that all the abilities, all your equipment come in form of cards. Now you might say, how does that make any sense? Do you build a deck and hope to draw the correct ability for that particular fight? Do you get to rearrange the order of cards before a fight, or what? Well, none of those are actually true. Honestly, the fact that the equipment and abilities are represented by cards doesn't really matter at all. If they were represented in a more traditional way, it would probably have close to no impact on the gameplay itself. But that's not a bad thing, at least not here in Book of Demons. Because the game tries to bring that feeling you had when you first played a dungeon crawler, the fact that the game does feel somewhat traditional in this manner is, at least I'd argue, a good thing. The fact that the abilities and equipment are represented by cards in essence only impacts two things. The first being the fact that both the equipment and abilities share a resource. You as a player are thus forced to make a decision whether you'd prefer to have more active abilities or the passive bonuses that come along with equipment. And truthfully, this is handled beautifully. All three of the basic ways to play the game, that being full-on active abilities, full-on equipment, or a healthy mix of both, are viable options to play the game. Though, I'd argue that the passive approach is a bit more stressless. The second is the fact that both the abilities and equipment can be upgraded and come in different rarities. The rarities are three to be precise: common, magical, and legendary, and work exactly as you'd expect them to. Common cards provide you with just the core ability or piece of equipment and then the ability that comes with it, while magical cards give you a bit extra and legendaries provide you with even more cool stuff. Now, please don't get the impression that you can upgrade cards to better rarities. That is simply not the case. So if you truly wish to have the best set of cards, you will have to gather the legendaries themselves. By the way, those you can get only by defeating the bosses. But I did mention upgrading the cards, and subsequently the abilities and equipment. And you can certainly do that. Each of the cards of all rarities have 3 different levels. And again, as you might expect, upgrading will grant you better abilities and better equipment. The upgrading is done, to probably no one's surprise at this point, using cards. These special cards are there solely to be used to upgrade other cards. They do come in 5 different variations, and you're gonna need different types to upgrade different cards. Man, I spoke a long time just about a little tiny twist of Book of Demons. Yet it needed to be said. So now that we're done with that, let's take a look at how exactly you will be playing Book of Demons. And the more I'm thinking about this is gonna be rather quick. You get to play as one of 3 classes: Warrior, Rogue, and Mage. And while they do have some differences, at their core they feel pretty similar. The only real difference comes in what abilities are available to you. But as each of these classes, you get to choose to use either your basic attacks or to use your active abilities. The basic attack works just as you'd expect. Well, maybe with the exception of the warrior that actually doesn't need to be in melee range for some reason I truly cannot grasp. And since the monsters don't have health bars with numbers, just little hearts, each of the attacks does 1 heart of damage. And the abilities usually do more damage or have some sort of an effect attached to them, like they can stun, do AoE damage, etc, etc. The amount of abilities available is pretty decent, though I personally would have liked to see a bit more. Using basic attacks is as simple as clicking, because that's literally how you use them. You just click at the enemy you want to attack. The abilities work sort of in 2 different ways, but both of these ways have one thing in common. First, you have to use them. Who would have guessed, right? Well, and some of them are just that. You push a button and something happens. But some of them apply a modifier to your basic attacks, turning them into, for example, fireballs if you're playing a mage, or lighting your arrow on fire when you're playing as a rogue. So that's what you get to throw at your foes, but well, not really. Before we talk about the enemies, we have to talk about equipment. I gotta say, I really loved how the equipment works here. Instead of just being a stat stick, improving your attack or defense in one way or another, it actually provides cool bonuses. Yes, there are passive bonuses, but it is still cool to see stuff like armor that gives you a chance at a health pickup whenever you get damaged, or a shadow sword that provides your basic attack with the ability to hit not just 1 but 2 enemies at once. Obviously, not all of the equipment is cool, but for the most part, yeah, and that's an awesome thing. So, now it's time to talk about the enemies. And God, you'll be killing a lot of enemies. There are over 70 different types of enemies, well, sort of. Technically, there are over 70 different types of enemies, but in reality, a lot of them feel pretty much the same. Often, they are just more powerful versions of the ones you have encountered earlier, or just like an elemental version of the same thing. But I will give the game this. They do have a ton of different abilities, but over time, yeah, they're gonna feel pretty repetitive. And apart from the hordes of minions, you're gonna fight bosses. Actually, tons of bosses. Well, tons of mini bosses to be more specific, and a few actual bosses. But first, the mini bosses. These appear, well, in almost every single level. Occasionally, you're gonna get a level that doesn't have one, or you'll be too lazy to explore it fully so you don't encounter one, but for the most part, you're gonna see at least one all the time. And they're okay. They aren't anything special, but they do fulfill that role of special enemies that you have to focus on rather well. And last of all, we have the full-fledged bosses. Sadly, there's only 3 of them. I really feel like at least 4, but 5 or even 6 would have fitted the game's story length much better. But they're legitimately fun. They have tons of phases, different abilities, and even each of their levels has a different mechanic attached to this. I was just taken aback by the level design for the second boss. I never expected that the developers would even attempt something like that. And I know I'm not telling you what it is because it would just be a huge spoiler for something I found really enjoyable. Now, you might think that I've already talked about everything relating to the gameplay that would be important, but you are mistaken. There is one more thing, and probably the best thing I really want to see in more games in the future I have to talk about. The flexi-scope system. What exactly is the flexi-scope system? It's a tool that gives you the option to set the length of levels to what exactly you feel like at the given moment. And holy mother of God, why has nobody come up with this sooner? You got like 10 minutes before you need to leave for work? No problem! You want something middle of the line, like 20 minutes? No problem! Or do you want to spend 40 minutes clearing that one single level? All of this is possible. The flexi-scope has 5 different settings, and truly, I hope this finds its way into more and more games because yeah, It's just that great. Okay, that's enough about the gameplay. Let's take a look at the rest of Book of Demons, starting with the story. And if there ever was a more archetypal fantasy dungeon crawler story than what you can find in Book of Demons, I would be rather surprised. You are a hero returning to a small village after traveling the world, only to find it has been infested by hordes of monsters. Not much more to it really. But I should mention that the devs, in their quest for nostalgia, managed to put in a ton of great Easter eggs. Some of them are quite obvious, some of them you'll need to search for, and some out there are only for those who will really explore. And yes, some of them are not that funny, but others are just great. Graphically, Book of Demons is, well, okay. It's not the most flashy game ever, but it does look decent and has an art style that I think will actually age rather well. It's sort of like if everything was made from paper. So if you're looking for a game with amazing visuals, Book of Demons might not be the thing you're looking for. But on the other hand, if you're looking for a game that will look good even a few years from now and you won't feel like puking when playing it, then Book of Demons will fill that role rather well. And as we are slowly bringing this review towards its inevitable end, we also have to take a look at the music, which is the most unexceptional thing about Book of Demons. It's not bad, not by any means, just bland. It works, but it doesn't stand out at all, nor do the sounds the game provides you with. It's just average. And lastly, the performance. No problems here, which is obviously good. No crashes, the game works well, runs well, and all that stuff that should be the norm. So, in conclusion, Book of Demons is a really good dungeon crawler, and I'm surprised that it isn't talked about more, to be honest. It's an homage to the great dungeon crawlers of old, and it should be taken exactly as that. Don't expect anything really new from the gameplay, but you will get hours and hours of fun. And again, I have to stress out how great the flexi-scope system is. It just gives you, as the player, so much control over how much time you want to spend on Book of Demons, and that's something that really shouldn't be undervalued. I can give my recommendation to buy Book of Demons with a clear conscience, and hope you enjoy it as much as I did. I'm sure gonna keep it installed for those moments when I feel like crawling in a dungeon. So that's it for today, guys. Hope you liked the review, and if you did, please consider giving us a thumbs up here on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And comment if you have anything you would like to add. See you guys later with more gaming content.